All right, y'all, let's have some fun here. So, Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, Democrat, went on Sean Hannity's show. Everybody knows he's like the most partisan Republican in the game. But look, I got to be honest with you. It was an interesting back and forth. I mean, sure, it was a little predictable. Sure, it was like the standard Democratic talking points versus the standard Republican talking points. But even given so, it's kind of nice to see people leave their bubble and just go back and forth a little bit. So I enjoyed this. I thought it was kind of interesting. Let's listen to some of the debate, and then we'll discuss it.
I don't think Joe Biden is mentally, physically capable of being the president of the United States. Hang on. I suspect if I took your phone and I took a look at it, not that I believe in privacy, I would never do that, I would bet on a daily basis that there are people urging you to run for president and primary him. Am I wrong in my assumption?
Well, my phone's been lighting up how well he did with the UK Prime Minister. My phone lit up and how he
That's a nice talk.
McCarthy on the debt ceiling.
Your phone light up?
My phone lights up with Republican friends saying, you know what? Despite all of the rhetoric, these bipartisan bills he keeps passing on infrastructure and the CHIPS and Science Act, the bipartisan work he did on gun legislation reform and around the debt ceiling, make me feel maybe he's done a little bit better job than some.
But that wasn't my question. Does your phone light up with, Gavin, you need to get in this primary? He's not able to run. He's not up to the job.
Look, everybody has their quiet chatter, and everybody's out there rooting for America. I'm rooting for our president, and I have great confidence in his leadership and what he's been able to accomplish.
I think his policies are failing.
CHIPS Act, Science Act.
Let me tell you guys why Gavin Newsom is saying this and why he's doing this. He is trying to get his name out there as much as possible. He's trying to be a fallback option where he'll hop in the race immediately if Joe Biden croaks. If not now, then he definitely wants to run in the next presidential election. But the reason why he's going to the mat hard for Joe Biden is because he's playing the game internally among the establishment corporate Democrats. So he feels like, hey, if I give Joe Biden a nice little fluff job over here, if I don't hesitate for a second in saying, forget about me, this isn't about me, this is about the country, and I think the president's doing a great job, he knows he sort of becomes one of the heirs apparent to take the throne. So what we're looking at, this is Game of Thrones type stuff. This is politicking. He's strategizing his way around behind the scenes, and he's not biting on the Sean Hannity trick. And by the way, Fox News loves to do this. They love to do this. And don't be under any illusions about Fox News, right? So they'll invite on Marianne Williamson. They'll invite on RFK. But their main reason for doing it is using them as a conduit to attack Biden by any means necessary. They don't care if you attack Biden from the right. They don't care if you attack Biden from the left. They don't care if you attack Biden from Jupiter. As long as you're attacking Joe Biden, they're like, we want to hear it. So, I mean, the best way to handle it is sort of how Marianne Williamson handled it, which is like, look, I'm not going to play your game. I know what you're doing. I'm not going to come here just to bash the president that you want me to bash to serve your own political ends. I'm going to tell you what my agenda is. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do for the country. Sure, I'll tell you how I'm different from Joe. I'll tell you my areas of disagreement with Joe, but I'm not just going to beat up on him like a piñata, which is exactly what you want me to do. And so Gavin Newsom is playing that game too. The only difference is Gavin Newsom is, of course, being a little too sycophantic, being a little too over the top. Again, because he's playing that internal game and snuggling up to the powers that be among the Democratic establishment so he could potentially get the blessing when he makes a move for the throne.
I will tell you on every measure from the economy, inflation, borders, energy, national security, he's missing in action.
Let's talk about them in order.
Hang on.
I want to challenge the premise. You said the economy?
He lists all the things. Hannity lists here's all the areas I disagree with him. And then Gavin Newsom's like, let's go one by one through them. And he's like, well, hold on. Yeah, that's the way it works. If you make a bunch of points, he gets to respond to the points, dippy.
Energy, national security, he's missing in action.
Let's talk about them in order.
Hang on.
I want to challenge the premise. You said the economy, 13.1 million jobs he's created. More.
These are post-COVID jobs. Okay. You know that. That's an artificial number.
So on that point, they're actually both right. They're both right there. Yeah, there's been a lot of job creation. But yeah, also we were coming off of a low because of COVID. So, do you give full credit? Do you give half credit? Do you give no credit? Obviously, Hannity's on the side of give him no credit. Newsom's on the side of give him full credit, when the real answer is you give him semi-credit, right? You give him half credit on that one. Because by default, you were going to have more job creation. But also, the economic policies probably help that as well. With the various stimulus packages, for example. So half credit, but they're both making a decent point there. They're just highlighting the thing that they think serves their partisan agenda more.
Then let me stipulate this as an opportunity to engage civilly on this.
Okay.
Fair point. Your president, Donald Trump, lost 2.6 million jobs during his 4 years. We created 13.1 million. Fine, you can maintain a COVID frame. How about the fact that Joe Biden's created more jobs, 6 times more jobs than the previous 3 Republican presidents combined?
Are you going to tell me that?
Look, on this one, he's spitting. And this has been the case my entire lifetime. You go back and compare the number of jobs created by Bill Clinton versus, say, George W. Bush. Bill Clinton blew George W. Bush out of the water. And I got a million problems with Bill Clinton. He's a colossal neoliberal. He did a bunch of right-wing reforms to welfare, for example. NAFTA was a disaster. So I'll criticize where you should criticize. But in terms of job creation, the scorecard is clear. The Democratic presidents obliterate the Republican presidents. Now, you want to say, hey, man, let's pawn that off to chance. Let's pawn that off to coincidence that Bill Clinton happened to be in office during the technology revolution and the internet. That's semi-fair. I'll give you that. That's semi-fair. But there's still no denying that scorecard. And by the way, it's really not just modern American history, too. If you go back and look at all of the trickle-down types, you go back and look at all the deregulators and the people who want tax cuts for the rich, who want to privatize more, they generally drive up the deficit colossally, and they generally have a terrible economic record where it's a boom-bust cycle. The bubble inflates, and then the bubble pops. The less you are committed to trickle-down economics or Reaganomics or voodoo economics, whatever you want to call it, the better you are. And the Democrats, even though many of them believe in that approach, they do make moderate, mild changes and reforms to that system, which just lead to better results.
The average family, where we have 2/3 of Americans now living paycheck to paycheck.
It was 70% under Trump. That was 70%. It was 70% under Donald Trump.
Gotta call balls and strikes, man. Greasy Gavin caught him speeding. Greasy Gavin caught Sean Hannity speeding there. Because, by the way, never in my life has any conservative pundit cared about sure, a lot of people have jobs, but the pay's not that high and they're living paycheck to paycheck. They never make that point under a Republican. You go back and watch. When it was Trump, it was, he's created X number of millions of jobs. This is before they all went away, right? He created so many jobs. It's wonderful. It's amazing. And Gavin caught him on that. So hold on now. If you want to bring up the paycheck to paycheck point, okay, but you got to look at that number under Trump as well. And his point is, it was even higher under Donald Trump. Sean, you're sort of getting outclassed here. You're getting outclassed by greasy Gavin Newsom, a guy who looks like the platonic ideal of a used car salesman.
We have the lowest unemployment rate for every demographic.
Now, we have the lowest black unemployment in history, and you and I are living with the lowest unemployment in our lifetime, Sean.
We had it for every demographic, and the economy was
black unemployment's record low under Joe Biden.
Okay. We had historic low after historic low under Donald Trump. I mean, but he's cleaned Trump's clock, Biden, in terms of the progress on job creation. Look at what he's done on jobs. What would you grade Joe Biden's presidency? Because you're at odds with the American people and the Democratic Party.
I'm just dealing with the facts. I'm dealing with the facts.
What is your grade for
I'm going to go back. Let's talk. You brought up 6 topics.
You got to answer some questions.
I'm answering the ones in order. You brought up the economy. On the economy, let's talk about the economy.
You want to give him an A?
Inflation. Stubborn around the globe. Let's talk about inflation. It's down 40% since last summer, 10 months in a row, 4.9%. He was just with the UK Prime Minister at 6.9%. Is that because of Biden's
I think
Fed
Biden's
policy?
Economic and energy policies
directly impacted the UK's inflation?
No,
or the fact that France is 5.5% or Germany's at 6.1%? On inflation, we're moving in the right direction. On the issue of the border security,
he inherited 1.4% inflation. It went up to 40-year high after 40-year high.
Globally.
On this point, they're both wrong. Because we've discussed in detail what has led to inflation when it was peaking. Say it with me, corporate greed. And there's a lot of articles now, even in mainstream outlets, that have come to admit this. They've come to say, you know what? Greedflation, as it's called, is actually a thing. So what happened is the media hyped up that inflation was happening. And then you had all these corporations say, we have an opportunity here. We have an opportunity to jack up prices across the board and make more profit simply because people are expecting inflation to continue more and more. And that's what they did. And that's why you saw corporate profits at a record high and continuing to climb. Because they were charging whatever they can get away with. You have executives in their boardroom calls on audio tape admitting this. hey, thankfully we can raise our prices. So that's what was leading to it. I believe Matt Stoller had it at about 60% of inflation was due to that, and the remainder was due to supply chain problems as a result of COVID. So it has nothing to do with the stimulus spending. That's a bogus narrative. And again, neither one of them is bringing up this point. You have Gavin Newsom, who's just defending Joe Biden. Oh, no, inflation's getting better. And you have Sean Hannity, who's like, yeah, but it was really bad, and it was bad under him. But nobody's bringing up the obvious elephant in the room, which is corporate greed is to blame. You need a windfall profits tax. You need to get their corporate asses in line when they start robbing the American people. But we never do that because we live in a corporatocracy, and corporations have effectively bought the government, so they get away with it.
You just brought up, you were making an excuse for Trump's dismal jobs record related to COVID.
It wasn't a dismal jobs record.
You won't acknowledge COVID's relationship to inflation globally. And by the way, COVID and immigration impacting our inflation.
Let me stop you. All right, so I would assume you're going to give Biden an A. Here's the problem that...
Not for nothing, I think they're both having fun. I think they're both having fun. It's kind of adorable. Keep it real. Sean Hannity is an establishment hack. Gavin Newsom is an establishment hack. But they're having fun with it. And I'm enjoying this as well.
You're arguing, you're fighting, you're battling, you're articulate. We could sit here for 3 hours, probably have a beer or two in the middle of this, and you can keep going. Here's the problem. Your president can't have this conversation. He's not capable of it. Now my question is a serious one.
All right.
Okay, is Joe Biden up to the job of being president? And as a little reminder, take a look at your president in the monitor.
And there's an awful lot of stories that are told, probably a bunch apocryphal about the former prime minister liking to take baths up that. Anyway.
Wandering around at 3 a.m. Yeah, Winston Churchill.
By the way, I met with who are those guys that fly over shortly? You heard of them, haven't you? And the cheer for we cheer for Muslim athletes like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I know him, and I did mispronounce his name. So I'm trying to think, where was the last place I was? It's hard to keep track. I mean, yeah, you're right, Ireland. That's where it was. EIGH%. He said, you're too much like that guy who led the revolution instead of the guy who was the prime minister. He said, you got to be less like the military guy. They shot him. God bless you all. Let's go lick the world. Let's get it done.
And then you got Joe Biden who's having a hard time standing up. Take a look at that one. I want you to tell me that you think he is cognitively strong enough to lead this country against China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, and a new axis of evil, and that he's the guy, he cannot articulate the economy the way you just did.
Yeah, but I don't think he's capable. I know he's capable. I see results. I've seen a masterclass in results the last few years. You don't see the results on the CHIPS Act. You don't see the results on the infrastructure. You had Infrastructure Week every week for 4 years.
We're still importing them all from Taiwan, which is about to be taken over by China.
We had $4 billion proof point just here in California with Applied Materials, bringing semiconductor investment back here in the state of California. My point being,
we're going to talk about
real results. But
look, he did just pivot to policy, right? He did just pivot to policy, which it's always fair to bring up policy when talking about a political conversation. So me personally, of course, I look at those videos and I go, and I think the normie reaction across this country is going to be, I don't know, man. That seems kind of rough. So I think that's true, but it's also fair to bring up the policy. Both of those things are fair. And I will also point out, man, we've all seen endless compilations of Donald Trump as well. Mispronouncing words, nearly falling over, staring at a solar eclipse. You could put together a goofy, sad, ridiculous compilation of Donald Trump. And ultimately, look, my takeaway from all this stuff is Joe Biden shouldn't be president and Donald Trump shouldn't be president. And I don't think that's a controversial point. I really don't. Neither one of them should be. Not just because they're not really all there anymore, albeit for different reasons and in different ways, but also because I'm not a big fan of both of their policy sets, even though Joe Biden's is by far less egregious and less horrendous for the nation.
Real results, jobs programs. The IRA, I know you don't like it. I mean, hundreds of billions of dollars in green energy investment, mostly in red states. You're the biggest beneficiary of the IRA.
He raised taxes on oil, gas, coal, pensions.
Oil, gas, and coal, raising taxes on them, based. But by the way, he's misstating so much here because we also know Joe Biden has bent over backwards to approve more oil drilling all over the place. So Hannity's trying to paint Biden as some sort of extreme far lefty, and that's just completely bogus. That's completely bogus. The guy is a corporate centrist Democrat. That's what he is.
Quote, taxes corporations. Corporations don't pay taxes. They pass the cost on to consumers. That's all they do. You know that.
On the issue of energy independence, I think it was your second of the list of items.
Do you think he's cognitively strong enough to be president?
I have conversations with him all the time, yes. And I'll tell you what.
You do?
I'm dead serious about that. I've talked to him when he's been overseas.
All right. Newsom slobbing on that Biden knob hard now, but you guys get the gist of it. This goes on. Look, I recommend everybody go check out the entire interview. It was fun. It was interesting. Effectively, it's an establishment Democrat versus an establishment Republican. But it really does go to show you that for all of my disdain and hatred for the corporate establishment Democrats, if you put one of them in front of Sean Hannity, you put one of them in front of a corporate Republican, I mean, Hannity's outclassed. He is. Of course, the over-the-top fawning praise of Biden is incredibly yikesy and kind of gross. But on the actual substantive points that he gets to, when he gets to them, it's like, well, yeah, on that one you got Hannity. You sort of checkmated him on this. You sort of checkmated him on that. And so, look, that says quite a lot. Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop. And watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.